It's January 2023, and it's time to find out what's on my master bus. So here's what I'm rocking. The first thing I have on the chain is Hornet VU Meter Mark IV, which is pretty cool because it will automatically adjust to a reference gain. So you can say that 0 VU is the same as negative 18 decibels. Don't necessarily need this if I've done all my gain staging right, but quite often I haven't done all my gain staging right. So it's nice to have sort of a last line of defense on my 2 bus to make sure everything's coming in at the right levels and I'm not overdriving anything. The next couple things, I have a few things that I use for 2 bus compressors. In this case, the track I'm working on is kind of needs a little bit of that SSL smack. So I am using the SSL Bus Compressor 2. Sometimes I use Brainworks Townhouse, which is very similar. It's based off of the same compressor. It's just got a few different options. I use Smart Comp by Sonable quite often. That's kind of a nice fire and forget sort of bus compressor. It's just a general purpose compressor. You can use it for literally anything, and it's extremely flexible, but sometimes it's overkill. I've also been experimenting with newfangled Invigorate, and that's interesting because it's sort of a parallel compressor. It's got this big mix knob in addition to all the attack release, and then something called anti-pump, which I'm not entirely sure what that does, but it filters the side chain of the compressor and steers bass away from the compression into the distortion to reduce pumping artifacts. Well, there you go. But you can adjust the compressor curve, you can adjust the amount, and seamlessly transform from compressed to limit to overdrive. I use this on material that needs to be more aggressive in the final stages. I don't have it enabled here because I don't need it on this one. I'll use that instead of the SSL, or I'll use it instead of the Smart Comp. I just load it up on the bus because I kind of like to. Next, I'm using Spectre, which is a parallel saturator. It saturates in parallel. I mean, there's not really much to say about it. It sounds good. It oversamples. It's fairly subtle. I just use it to give a little bit of extra top end, a little bit of extra air, and a little bit of extra woomph down in the subs. I'll adjust this a little bit, but generally we're talking very, very subtle adjustments just to try and add a little extra something. Sometimes I won't even use that at all. I occasionally use the new Loop Trotter Saturate, which is a wonderful plugin. It is a very nice saturator that has this magic knob which emulates a Neve transformer, if I'm not mistaken. And it does a lot of nice stuff, but I don't always use that. I just like to have a couple saturators loaded up in case I need them. After that, I'm mixing into Ozone 10, and that may seem weird, but I've taken a tip from watching a bunch of Jason Joshua mix sessions, and he uses, I think, Ozone 4, which is wild, but he has a mix template that he uses, and I believe he's replicated it in his God Particle plugin. And I don't use the God Particle much, but I mean, it's neat. I mean, I use this. I just have a preset that handles some of my stereo imaging and a little bit of EQ, and I use some of the dynamic EQ in there too because it works pretty well. So it's nothing fancy. It loads up a whole bunch of stuff, but I don't use most of it. I just have some preset settings that I start with, and then I tweak as necessary. The next bunch I don't use unless I'm making a preview. This is sort of pre-mastering stuff. If I'm going to actually have these mastered or master them, I'll do that in a separate session. But if I kind of want to hear how it sounds, I'll bump it into limiter 6 by Tokyo Dawn, and I'm just using the clipper, and I'm using it at most to get like a decibel off the top, and just to make the final stage, which is smart limit here, have to work a little less hard. Smart limit is a wonderful limiter. It's very clean. It can do all sorts of stuff. I don't generally go for a whole lot of gain reduction, but I'll use these last couple if I'm creating demo tracks to send to band members, or if I'm just pushing stuff out for a test mix to listen into my car or whatever. Most of the time, these are just off. The final couple are for monitoring purposes. I have a gain plugin just so I can check it in mono, because that's the gain is the default utility in Logic, and the mono fold down is nice. I use Slate VSX for those times when I'm monitoring on headphones, just for a little room emulation so I can check my mixes. And finally, if I'm playing through the big speakers, I've got Sound ID reference by Sound ID and SonarWorks, and that just does room correction for me and helps flatten out the image a bit, because I have a nice Z-axial node at around 140 hertz that's really hard to treat because it's floor to ceiling, and it makes things a little difficult. I can't really put bass traps on the floor. I can put them on the ceiling, and I have, but that only does so much. So, yeah, that's the master bus. It's a lot, but I don't use all of it, and what I do use, I tend to use fairly subtly. I try to do most of my work on the individual channels, although having a few things on the master bus helps kind of clean things up and glue it all together at the end. So there you go. It's 2023, and that's what's on my master bus. So yeah, I'm doing videos now. You're watching some random studio stuff on the Null Device channel. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe. Or don't. I'm not a cop.